Hello and welcome to the Finjan Show. Thank you so much for joining us again on a different episode. In this episode, we're going to discuss one of the things that we've been hearing a lot about, which is understanding how to digitally network. And the truth is, we do have many articles that we've written about the art of networking. And I mentioned that because you could always use our blogs for other references for you to have access to information, obviously for free. So please feel free to search the net for the art of networking to see what other blogs you could read through our medium that maybe allow you to leverage that information in a meaningful way for you. Networking has always been part of doing business. And in many cases, it used to be, of course, in networking events and different trade shows and different activities within where you pumped into people and chatted with them. And with today's new environment, although some things are happening in person, many things are happening online. So the question becomes, can you really network digitally? And the answer is yes. You can absolutely network digitally. As a matter of fact, the accessibility of the network today is much better than it's ever been. In the past, if you were to try to find some individuals, and unless you're physically there, they didn't really want to engage. Today, many people that we've interacted with seem to be open to even having a call via Zoom or via WhatsApp or via just a phone call with almost anyone, despite the fact that in the past, they would have told you, let's meet somewhere. And if you were not there physically, you probably never had the chance or the opportunity to network with them. Now, let's clarify a couple of things. Networking, where sometimes people get confused with, and what I've learned from others, is that people confuse networking with sales. Networking is not selling. Now, there are some networking events for sales, and you should be selling there. Generally speaking, networking is for building relationships. It's not meant for you to close a deal or to start a deal, but it's meant for you to start a conversation about maybe potentially a deal. So what's the difference in there? Well, the difference is you want to approach networking with the approach of, I'm here to understand, I'm here to be interested, not interesting. Interested in what you do, interested in learning more about you, interested in understanding how we could potentially maybe one day work together, or at least maybe refer you to someone that could potentially benefit from you. Versus interesting, me discussing all the things I know and all the things I do, because it's much easier for me since I already know it better for me to discuss it. Although you don't do it because you want to, you do it because it's easier and more comforting. I encourage you to watch what you do and how you say it and be more interested about the individuals that you're networking with. So the way you approach networking in today's digital format is going to be a little bit different than if you were obviously in person. But I want to encourage you to think about when you are doing digital networking is a couple of things. One is obviously your behavior and your demeanor. Two, the environment that you're in, meaning is it a networking event? Is it a meeting one-on-one? Is it, is it set up by somebody? Is it set up by a third party? Is it set up by you or the other person? And then the last thing I'm going to say is the environment where you are video your whole network. So an example of this would be my background, right? What are you wearing? Those are the things you want to think about. I mentioned that because sometimes people think, well, it's COVID or it's this or that. It doesn't matter what it is. You just have to remember that people still make an impression from you based on what they see and hear. Unfortunately, maybe it's not necessarily the reality of who you are, but that's the impression that they will get. So think about that digital networking in those kinds of ways. Now, let's go ahead and talk about what would it look like for you to digitally network. How would you approach someone if you've never talked to them? How would you talk to them if they're with you now? Let's take a break. We'll be right back after this short break to have a bigger discussion on what could be next with this digital networking and the art of it. Thanks for joining. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and thanks for joining today's Finjan show. We're talking about the power of art of networking digitally. So I mentioned earlier that you want to think about your physical presence, your background, your demeanor, the words that you're using. You also want to think about who is this meeting is set up by. Is it set up by someone, by you, by a third party, and what's the purpose of this meeting? And remember, you're there to build relationships by asking questions to understand versus to be interested in what you're having to say or to sell. So the way you want to think about that is first you want to ask some questions. I would also encourage you before you ask any questions to do some homework, especially if you know who are you meeting with. If you're not knowing who you're going to be meeting with, then obviously you could just do the work while you talk, asking them some questions. And could be usually easier questions such as, what do you do? What side of town do you live in? What is the weather like in that side of town or that area? If they're obviously in your city or in state, you don't want to do that. You could start with different conversation, but generally these days you can also network with people who are just far away. You can also ask, is that normal schedule? Have you been able to get back in person? You could ask all kinds of questions to really get you engaged with them to see how they're thinking. The second thing I'm going to say is digital networking, or the art of it, is doing the homework before. If you can, do a lot of research about the individuals that you're going to meet with. Find out what they do. Find out what they read or what they like. You could see a lot of these things through their LinkedIn, Facebook, any other social media to see what pages they like, what things they comment on, and things of that nature. And by the way, there's also a hint for you for art of networking digitally is to find other people that you're interested in that maybe potentially one day you'll do business with and like and comment on their postings, right? That's how you really network with them. And the reason why I'm saying that, because remember, you're building a relationship. So now you're interacting with them in different ways. And for those who listen to our Power of 777 marketing, now you understand that this is yet one more way to touch the customer or the potential customer. So therefore, you're building relationship, you're building trust. You're also getting them to know you and you're getting to know them better. So therefore, you could actually do a better job performing the services for them, as well as they would be happier with what you're doing because you completely now understand what they're doing and what they're going through. So with that being said, the way you do it is you find what they're posting, you comment on it, you like what they're posting. If there's something you don't like, you address it. If there's something that you could bring in there to their attention, or you find an article that could be potentially helpful for them, you'll forward it to them. This is really part of the networking, right? So you're not just thinking about them once, you're thinking about them in a holistic way and thinking about them in many other ways. You're talking to someone and they're like, I would love to do X, Y, Z. And you're like, you know what? I might know a few people that could do that, referring them to that. That's really part of the network. And today's in digital world is much easier. I would also caution you with a couple of things, because it's easy today, for instance, do an introduction via email. I would caution you to always make sure that you ask for permission. It's kind of like if you were physically in a place, you don't just take someone and drag them across the room or across town to meet someone for them to talk to. You probably will tell them, hey, I'm going to meet someone at this location. Would you be interested in meeting them, right? So I would think you would want to think about that digitally the same way. That's part of the art of networking digitally, is to ask permission first before you do an introduction, unless they have told you already or agreed with you that please introduce me to anyone you want. And then I would also say follow up on some of those introductions just to make sure that they met their expectations and they were not something that they did not expect. Thank you for joining us today at the Finjan Show, and I'm hoping some of these insights will shed a light for you of the power or the art of networking digitally. So think about the cause of the call, think about who's setting up the call, and think about the environment of the call. Thanks for joining. Till the next show, have a good day.